in, remove distractions for the next few moments, and listen with an open mind because tonight's message has the potential to change the way you understand reality itself. There is a version of you alive at this very moment for whom the thing you most want is already settled, already ordinary, so fully a part of his life that he no longer thinks about it the way you do, not think about the floor beneath your feet. That version is not a fantasy. He is not waiting somewhere in a distant future you must work your way toward. He exists now as real as the chair you are sitting in, and tonight I want to show you the door that leads into his life because it has been standing open the whole time. Let me begin not with technique, but with the world itself, because everything follows from how you understand it. Your senses report a world that is solid, slow, and orderly. Cause arrives first, effect arrives later, and there always seems to be a long road between the two. This is the world you have been taught to trust completely. But this world is not the source of anything. It is the shadow cast by something more fundamental, the world of imagination. Not imagination as idle daydreaming, but imagination as the living substance from which everything you can see is continually being poured. William Blake said it plainly. Imagination is the real and eternal world of which the physical universe is only a faint shadow. Hold that tonight not as a beautiful phrase, but as a description of how reality is actually built. The visible is the echo, the imaginal is the voice. And here is the claim that follows, which may sound almost too generous to believe. Whatever you desire already exists, not as something you must construct from nothing through years of striving, not as a reward you must finally earn by becoming worthy enough. It exists right now, complete as one state among the infinite states that fill what I will call the dimensionally larger world, the vast field of everything that could ever be experienced, all of it present at once, none of it waiting in line to be built. So your work was never creation in the sense of manufacturing. Your work is selection. You are not gathering raw materials to assemble your desire piece by piece. You are choosing it from a structure of reality where it already stands finished and then bringing yourself into alignment with it. Let me make that concrete because the mind reaches for something it can hold. Picture every possible version of your life existing right now, not in theory, but in fact. The version of you whose work is already flourishing, the version whose body already moves with ease and health, the version already at home inside the relationship you longed for. All of them are real, fully formed in the eternal present of consciousness. And the only question that decides your daily experience is a quiet one. Which of them are you being? Which one, through your habitual feeling, are you claiming as yourself? The instrument of that choosing is imagination, not used loosely, but engaged with precision as the faculty through which your consciousness reaches into the field and takes hold of a single state. When you imagine your desire fulfilled, and you do it with enough sensory richness and enough genuine feeling, that the scene becomes a place you are standing in rather than a picture you are watching, you have not invented anything. You have tuned yourself to a signal that was already in the air. Think of an old radio with a dial. The music you want is already playing. The station is already broadcasting fully and continuously whether or not you are receiving it. You do not create the song by turning the dial. You simply move yourself until the static thins, then clears, then resolves into sound. Feel that motion in your hand, that small, deliberate turn. That is what assumption is, and this is why feeling matters more than the mental picture ever could. A picture without feeling is the dial set near the station but not quite on it. You catch a fragment, a burst of clarity, then noise again. Feeling is what brings the tuning into full lock. Not feeling performed, not emotion you force upon yourself, but the settled bodily sense of already being the person for whom this is simply true. When that arrives, the tuning is complete. You have selected the state and the outer world, which only ever expresses what consciousness has already chosen, begins the slow work of confirming it. Now I want to face the thing that troubles the reasoning mind the moment it hears this. Time. In ordinary experience, time runs in one direction. The future has not happened. The present is happening. The past is gone and sealed. This feels so complete that any alternative seems absurd. But that procession belongs only to the shadow world, the world of effects, the world your senses report. It does not govern the world of imagination, which is the source from which the shadow is cast. In that deeper place, all states exist together in a single standing present, a now that holds at once what physical life experiences as past, present, and future. This is not mysticism dressed up for its own sake. It carries one entirely practical consequence, and I want you to grasp it clearly. When you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you are not planting a future event that will arrive after some delay. You are stepping right now into a state that already exists in the eternal present, in the only dimension that finally matters. Your desire is not pending, it is done. What remains is only for the physical world, which always lags behind consciousness, to catch up and confirm what has already been received. This is what living in the end actually means, not waiting for an outcome, but occupying one that, in the standing now, has already occurred. Here I have to be direct, because sincere people try this teaching and find that nothing moves, and they deserve to know why. There is an enormous difference between wishing for a thing and assuming the feeling of having it. The difference is not subtle once you have seen it. Wishing holds the desire at arm's length. In its very structure, it announces, I do not have this, and I want it. So every act of wishing, however heartfelt, however earnest, quietly confirms the absence of the thing wished for. It is an honest report of lack, repeated and by repetition, made stronger. Living from the end says something entirely different. It says, this is already so. It does not pretend the shadow world has changed yet. It simply refuses to let the shadow determine the inner state. It moves into the consciousness of someone for whom the desire is no longer even a desire because it has already been received. So, if you have visualized, if you have affirmed and found no fruit, examine honestly which of the two you were really doing. Were you watching a scene of your desire while underneath still feeling its absence? Were you reciting words while the conviction beneath them stayed fixed on doubt? That is wishing wearing the costume of manifestation. The correction is never more effort poured into the same wishing. The correction is the genuine crossing over into feeling the state as already yours. The old instruction to pray without ceasing is, I believe, almost always misunderstood. It is not a command to mutter petitions all day long. Properly understood, it describes a sustained inner posture, the feeling held not only during dedicated moments of practice, but carried steadily throughout the day that what you want is already yours. That sustained feeling is the real creative work, and it must be held through whatever interval stretches between the inner shift and its outer arrival, an interval that sometimes passes quickly and sometimes takes its time, but is never proof that the law has failed. This is where detachment becomes essential, and I want to be exact about it because people confuse it with not caring. Detachment is not the absence of desire. It is the absence of anxious monitoring, the constant checking of the outer world for proof, which itself broadcasts the very lack you are trying to leave behind. Be still and know. That stillness is not passivity. It is the quiet confidence of someone who has done the inner work and feels no need to keep verifying it, because he understands that verification is not how growth operates. You do not dig up the seed each morning to inspect the roots. You water it, and you trust the law that governs every living thing, both seen and unseen. When you truly know that your desire has already been received in the dimension where reception happens, the anxious checking does not have to be suppressed. It simply becomes unnecessary. The whole relationship between you and what you want changes from longing into calm and certain knowing. From that knowing, the most remarkable thing happens. You become, in Neville's words, impervious to discouragement. Not because circumstances stop appearing, but because you have finally understood circumstances correctly as the shadow they are. And the flickering of a shadow no longer disturbs a person who has stopped mistaking it for the light. Let me clear away another misunderstanding. This teaching does not ask you to go limp, sit back, and wait for the universe to deliver. It asks nothing of the kind. What it transforms is the character of your action. When you have genuinely entered the state of the wish fulfilled, not touched it for a moment and dropped it, but increasingly lived from it, you will find yourself moved to act. Those actions will not feel like effort pushed against a wall. They will feel almost inevitable, as though something wider than your calculating mind were guiding your steps. That is exactly what is occurring. By assuming the state of fulfillment, you have aligned yourself with an intelligence that sees further than your daily awareness can, one that perceives openings and connections invisible from where you ordinarily stand. This is the true meaning of seeking first the kingdom. Establish the inner state first with real feeling and real persistence, and the right actions will arrive at the right moments, asking far less force than the desperate striving of a person who acts from lack ever could. A fair question rises in sincere hearts. What if what I want seems to require something another person also wants? Does my having it cost them theirs? I want to answer this plainly because the fear of taking something keeps so many people imagining small, apologizing for their own desires, careful never to want too much. That hesitation is itself a form of self limitation, born from a misunderstanding of how the source works. In the dimensionally larger world, the field of pure possibility from which every state is selected, there is no scarcity and therefore no real conflict. Limitation and competition belong to the shadow world, which is finite and so appears to run short. But the source from which all things proceed is not finite. It is inexhaustible, able to fulfill the genuine desire of every consciousness at once, without one person's good being subtracted from another's. Light one candle from another, and the first loses nothing. Its flame is not made smaller by what it gives, and the room only grows brighter. The source from which all states are drawn behaves exactly this way. Even when two people appear to want the very same thing, what each is truly reaching for is the feeling beneath it. The field holds an endless supply of that feeling, arranged into outer forms by paths neither of them could have planned. When you assume your fulfillment, you remove nothing from anyone. You select your own version from a field that has no bottom, and your selecting leaves that field as full as it ever was. Each time you shrink a desire to leave room for someone else's, you are not being generous to them. You are only teaching your own consciousness that good is scarce and must be rationed, and consciousness always obeys what you teach it. So let the fear go. Imagine fully. Imagine boldly. There is no need to be modest with an inexhaustible source. Now I want to draw your attention beneath the particular things you might be chasing: the money, the relationship, the position, the recovery. Because what lies underneath them, when addressed directly, often accomplishes more than chasing each one alone. The principle of assumption does not apply only to outer circumstances. It applies just as fully to states of being, to the qualities of peace, joy, and love through which you meet your entire life, regardless of what is happening in it. If what you most deeply want is not a thing at all, but a different inner climate, then assume it the same way. Assume the feeling of being peaceful. Assume the feeling of being someone through whom love moves easily and without anxiety. Notice how this actually works in the body. You do not argue yourself into peace, and you do not wait for a reason before you allow yourself to feel it. You recall, even faintly, the sensation of an evening when everything was already well, and you let that sensation settle into your shoulders, your breath, the expression on your face, until it stops being a mood you are chasing and becomes simply the atmosphere you are living within. Held long enough, that atmosphere is no longer something you generate moment by moment. It becomes something you are. Live from these states with the same persistence you would give any other, and you will find the entire texture of your experience beginning to change. Not because the outer world rearranged itself first, but because the lens through which you see every part of it has changed. And notice what often follows. As you raise the state you are living from, moving out of anxious wanting and into settled, quiet joy, the specific things you once held so tightly often arrive almost as an afterthought, no longer carrying the urgent weight they once did. That is not disappointment. It is the sign that you have aligned with something deeper than any single desire, the creative source from which all your desires were rising in the first place. Recognized directly, it makes particular acquisitions feel like natural extensions of who you are, rather than emergencies you had to solve. Which brings me to the deepest layer of everything I have shared tonight, the place where the technique, however well practiced, finally opens into its full power. when the truest version of this teaching says that everything you want is already here. It is not only promising a faster arrival of your wishes, it is pointing to something far greater, the recognition that you already carry within your own nature everything you have ever tried to gather from the outside. The kingdom, the ancient words tell us, is within you. That is not poetic comfort. It is a precise statement of where the source of every fulfillment actually lives. The wealth, the love, the health, and the peace you have been searching for are not waiting in some distant place to be discovered. They already exist as possibilities inside the creative power that you yourself are. Your task was never to travel toward them across a great distance. It was to recognize them, to select them, and to bring your consciousness into alignment through genuine feeling and sustained assumption with what was always, in the deepest sense, already yours. When that recognition stops being an occasional visitor and becomes the ground beneath your feet, when you live from the understanding that you are the creative power itself, individualized and free to select from infinite possibility, rather than beg a separate universe for scraps, your entire relationship with desire is transformed. You no longer want from lack. You want from abundance already known, the way a fountain that knows itself to be endless never worries about running dry. That is the promise beneath all of this. Not merely that certain things are coming, though many of them are, but that you are about to know fully and peacefully, as the ordinary truth of your daily life, that you already are everything you could ever want to be. In that knowing, desire itself changes. It stops being a confession of what you lack and becomes simply the natural creative movement of a consciousness that has finally remembered what it truly is. So go forward not as someone reaching anxiously for what is missing, but as someone quietly recognizing what has always been yours. Live from that recognition. Hold it through whatever interval the shadow world needs to catch up with the state you have already chosen. Then watch with calm wonder as someone who has finally understood the structure of his own experience, while your world gradually rearranges itself to confirm what was, in the eternal now, already true. What you are seeking is not approaching from somewhere far away. It is already here, in the only place anything has ever truly been, your own consciousness, waiting only to be recognized. If this message spoke to you today, don't let it end here. Take one idea from this lecture and practice it consistently over the coming days. Sometimes one deeply understood truth can transform an entire life. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to Stories and Quotes Bee, give this video a like, and share it with someone who may need this message today. Your support helps this channel continue bringing timeless wisdom to people around the world. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. Until we meet again, keep believing, keep imagining, keep growing, and remember that the greatest transformation always begins within. Have a peaceful evening, take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.